Welcome to the Creativity and Consciousness podcast, a space to explore the intersection of creativity, spirituality, and personal transformation. I'm your host, Jake Coburn, visionary artist, author, and your humble guide in the exploration of our consciousness. In each episode, we dive into ideas related to magic, visionary art, and alternative spirituality. I bring you conversations with leading thinkers and innovators to help us tap into our creative potential, expand our minds, and transform our lives. Whether you're an artist seeking inspiration, a spiritual seeker exploring new paths, or someone on a journey of self-discovery, this podcast is here to help unlock new possibilities and awaken our inner power. Let's journey beyond the ordinary. Welcome to the Creativity and Consciousness podcast. All right, so this week I wanted to talk about the Kybalion and the 7 Hermetic principles. I wanted to talk about the Kybalion because it is the most popular occult book ever published. And it's one of those texts that is sort of controversial, I guess. Some people absolutely love it. There are people in the magical community that absolutely hate it. But it's significant, no matter what way you slice it. It's one of those kind of gateway books, I think, that is, I guess, one of the more visible kind of entry points into the Hermetic tradition and into magic and things like that. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. It's one of the famous lines from the Kybalion, which basically asserts that you could tell anybody the deepest secrets of reality. But unless they're really ready to hear that, and unless they have already within them the understanding of what that means, they're not going to get anything out of it. And so there are no secrets in magic, really. So the Kybalion is the compilation of Hermetic teachings. However, it's arguably not an authentic Hermetic text. It's inspired by Hermeticism. However, it doesn't have roots to an authentic Hermetic tradition. If you are interested in the authentic Hermetic tradition, you might want to try to read the Hermetica, for example, or the Corpus Hermeticum. These are authentic Hermetic texts. And we'll get into what Hermetic actually means. But these are the doctrines based on principles originally espoused by Hermes Trismegistus. And it provides a master key for students to unlock the fundamental and basic teachings of esoteric philosophy. So there are 7 Hermetic principles within the Kybalion that the philosophy is based on, and these principles constitute an explanation of the basic laws that apply to all of creation. So the work is attributed to the 3 initiates, but it's basically fact at this point that it was written and published by William Walker Atkinson, who was a very prolific author who generally wrote within the New Thought tradition. New Thought is what basically the Secret is based off of, and the Secret is quite a watered down version of it. There are some actually exceptional New Thought mystics and philosophers, including Neville Goddard. So who was Hermes Trismegistus? The ancient sage Hermes Trismegistus, which means the thrice great Hermes, is the source of the tenets in the Kybalion. The Jewish tradition claims that Hermes Trismegistus was also a contemporary of the patriarch Abraham. As a result, his teachings on Hermeticism and Hermetic laws date to over 5,000 years ago. Even while he was alive, his wisdom reached across continents. The earliest Egyptians named him the scribe of the gods. He was defined by the Greeks as the god of wisdom. The ancient Romans named him Mercury. Hermes discovered alchemy, which developed into chemistry. He created the concept of astrology, which became astronomy. For his wisdom, he is known as the master of masters. Hermes Trismegistus was the original fount of knowledge from which the Hermetic tradition flowed. So it's not clear if Hermes Trismegistus was an actual person, and it was quite possibly a pen name adopted by the Hermetic thinkers and scholars in the time of ancient Greece as a way of codifying the teachers of ancient wisdom, knowledge, and tradition. The name acknowledges the greatness of the Egyptian gods and the Egyptian wisdom traditions, and acknowledges the Egyptian god of wisdom Thoth or Tehuti being 3 times greater than the Greek god Hermes. Hermeticism is a very ancient tradition that stretches back to the time of Hellenistic Greece, where the majority of the Hermetic writings took place, specifically in Alexandrian Egypt, where there was a vast intersection of different world cultures. There was the commingling of knowledge from ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, as well as from the Middle East, from Semitic traditions, etc. So the Hermetic texts are generally known as the Hermetica, and they stretch back to at least 300 BCE. And much of modern occultism pays homage to and is in a certain way a continuation of the Hermetic tradition. The Hermetica includes the technical Hermetica, which are grimoires and practices of magic, of ritual and things like that. So that's where a lot of modern occultism and magic derives its roots. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the Kybalion. The Kybalion was published in 1908 by the Yogi Publication Society and is seen by a lot of people as the modern foundation of the Hermetic doctrine. I think that it's seen less so to be the modern foundation of the Hermetic doctrine in recent years because of the understanding that it's not an authentic Hermetic text, as well as the availability of proper translations of Hermetic knowledge, which have been made available in the information age that we live in now. The story is that the ancient Hermetic knowledge was passed down from student to teacher to initiates for thousands of years. So the Kybalion has this kind of air of antiquity by claiming that it's the first time these teachings have been written down, but they were passed through word of mouth to initiates in specific orders or cults or sects through strict secrecy for thousands of years. So the word Hermetic tends to refer to sealed or protected or things that are occult. It's intentionally sealed information to try to keep these teachings secret to protect them from religious persecution. There were a lot of times when Hermeticism was popular in an underground way. It was very popular, for example, during the Renaissance, but that Hermetic practitioners and scholars faced a lot of risk of persecution from the Catholic Church, which was in power at the time. Although credited to the three initiates, it's generally accepted that the book was written and published by William Walker Atkinson, who may have been a student of the Order of the Golden Dawn. The book is sometimes also attributed to Paul Foster Case, who was one of the founders of an American offshoot of the Golden Dawn called the Builders of the Aditya, which is still active today. The third initiate may have been the voice of the master Hermes Trismegistus, who may have dictated the book to Atkinson and Case. This is a quote from William Walker Atkinson. The use of the will as the projector of mentative currents is the real base of all mental magic. You find a lot of this cosmology present throughout the Kybalion, which is what ties it to the New Thought tradition, which is the idea that our thoughts are causative, which has some similarities to classic Hermetica, but is also quite distinct in certain ways. Why read the Kybalion? The philosophy laid out in this book constitutes the basic principles of the Hermetic art of mental alchemy. These basic doctrines deal with the mastery of mental forces. When you learn to apply universal laws, you will possess the key to performing mental transmutation. This empowers the individual practitioner to adjust vibrational states from one to another. Essentially, by studying the laws in the Kybalion, you can learn how to change your reality by changing your mind. So there are 4 Hermetic axioms within the Kybalion. These Hermetic axioms are: the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. Where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teachings open wide. When the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom. And the principles of truth are 7. He who knows these understandingly possesses the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. The emphasis in this book is that when you are ready, this book will appear to you. When you're ready, this information, this wisdom will come to you when you are ripe to understand it. And so I think we're all in that position here to be ready and to have been chosen in a certain sense to be initiated into this particular current of knowledge, wisdom, information, and understanding. The first Hermetic principle, the principle of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. So this is to say that reality is a mental construct, and that by changing your thought patterns, you can literally change your reality and manifest what you desire. It's also to say that God, also known as the all, is a universal, infinite, and living mind of which we are all a part. So we are sort of characters in the imagination of God, so to speak. As a metaphor, you might think of how an author writes a story, and the characters of that story are a transmission of that author. There's a little spark of that author. You know, a little bit of J.K. Rowling lives in Harry Potter, for example. And so, in the same way, there is the essence of God within each one of us, the essence of the all in each one of us. And the all is the collective mind that we all live through, and which manifests as our entire universe. It's also to say that we only experience reality through our perceptions and cannot experience the universe in any other way. Therefore, our personal universe really only exists within our minds. You can't separate those two things. There's not reality and our minds or our perceptions. Reality only coexists through the interactions of our perceptions, of our minds, with reality. Those two things are intrinsically linked and in a certain sense one and the same. And when you understand that by shifting your perceptions and your beliefs, your ideas, your perspectives, etc., you can therefore change your reality. In fact, every time you alter your consciousness, and that could be anything from, taking LSD to, eating potato chips, anything that creates any sort of change in your consciousness is actually altering your reality. It's altering your universe. The second Hermetic principle is the principle of correspondence. You've probably heard this before. As above, so below, so above. This is to say, the contents of our minds, as within, correspond to what occurs in our external world, as without. Your thoughts mirror your reality and vice versa. As you begin to change your ideas, beliefs, and perceptions of the world, when you change your minds, the reality around us tends to change. It's also to say that we are all a fractal of the universe. The microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm. And this also relates to the principle that we talked about last week of sympathetic magic. Whereas you, for example, could affect a voodoo doll, which is a microcosm, and that affects the person that you want to affect. That's the macrocosm. But most of Hermetic magic understands that as above, so below, we are the microcosm of the universe. And so if you want to affect the universe, you have to affect yourself. And so most of the Hermetic magic rituals actually relate to affecting our own consciousness and affecting ourselves through the use of certain rituals, which then result in changes in the universe around us. It's also to say that we are born of the mind of the all, as I was saying before, with the metaphor of the author creating characters in their stories. Therefore, there is the essence of the all in everything. The third principle is the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. On a practical level, this is to say that by resonating certain emotions like joy, love, gratitude, and happiness, or conversely, sadness, hate, anger, or aggression, you will naturally attract corresponding vibrations from others and the outside world. In common parlance, your vibe attracts your tribe. It's kind of true, though. When you begin to sort of resonate at certain vibrations, and these aren't scientific, technical terms, these are metaphors and allegories, but when you emit a certain energy, it seems to attract certain circumstances to you based on that energy that you emit. It's also to remind us that everything at all times is changing, that nothing is at rest, and the circumstances of our lives are always shifting, which is important to remember, and we're going to touch on this more deeply in the further principles. And in order for a situation to manifest, it has to be attracted to and resonate with the proper vibration. So ritual, one way to look at it, and as I said, there are many different perspectives on how magic works, but one way to look at it is that through the use of ceremonial ritual, you are changing your vibration, and through the change in your vibration, that then attracts a different outcome. The fourth principle is the principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. So what we think of as opposites, or things that are distinct, are actually just differences in degree. Hot and cold are not categorically different, they're just changes in degree. Cold is just the absence of heat, and they're both one thing, which is temperature. Mental states, likewise, are all different only by degrees, and understanding this law allows you to change your mental state at will and have control over your mind, thoughts, and the vibrations that they produce. Understanding that opposites are just different degrees of the same thing enables you to move along the axis. This fact enables you to transmute one mental state into another along the lines of polarization. So sadness and happiness are just varying degrees of the same thing. Richness and poorness are all varying degrees of the same thing. And so when you understand that, that can help you to actually shift that pole, to swing the pendulum from one side to the other. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Life isn't constant. It's always changing and moving up and down. No matter where you are, whether it's good or bad, things will change. This is something that I tend to be reminded of anytime I work with the I Ching, the Book of Changes. Really emphasizes that no matter what your circumstances are, whether they're favorable or unfavorable, that it will change. The law of impermanence, as is taught in Buddhist philosophy, and I think it's really important to keep in mind, because a lot of these Hermetic principles are actually related to not so much controlling our external worlds, but actually controlling our internal worlds, having a certain degree of mastery over our own minds and consciousness. Your thoughts and habits, beliefs, and identifications that you hold will determine who you become and what your life becomes by creating a pattern which locks in its manifestation. So we're going to also look at the principle of cause and effect here in a moment. But when you begin to assume an identity, and with that identity assume certain beliefs and certain ideas, this then inspires the pattern of behavior that then becomes your life. So if you want to change your life, you actually need to change the pattern of behavior that creates those circumstances for your life experience to be what it is. The Kybalion states the measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. So in other words, what comes up comes down, what comes down comes up. This is very symbolically represented by the tarot card, the Wheel of Fortune. Yeah. Number 6, the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. That is to say, nothing ever happens by accident. Everything that happens comes about through natural laws and the law of cause and effect. This is called karma in Eastern religious systems. Understanding the laws of causation and learning how to apply them, you can cause the effects that you desire via an act of mental creation that can cause your desired manifestations. By understanding the causes and conditions of your desired outcome, you can consciously make decisions that are in alignment with your goals. So most people just react to things that are happening to them in their lives. They're always at effect to what's around them. By understanding this principle, this can bring us and elevate us to the level of being the cause of the situations and circumstances of our lives, and to not be just at the mercy to or at the effect of the circumstances of our lives. The final principle, the principle of gender, says gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. So this is a controversial one, especially in the world that we live in today when gender roles are rapidly shifting. And it is a bit of a sign of the times in which this book was written in the early 1900s, when there wasn't as much fluidity to our understanding of gender as there is now. So I think that the way to look at this is not so much to think of this as the physical gender that we possess or that we identify with, but rather gender as a kind of abstract spiritual principle. Every one of us has both a masculine energy as well as a feminine energy, just as the correspondences with the various elements. These are traditional attributions, right? So this is a traditional way of looking at what masculine energy means as well as feminine energy. It doesn't mean that if you're a male identified person that you should have these masculine qualities or vice versa. We all have these energies within us. There's a masculine principle and a feminine principle to all things. Manifestation occurs through the union of opposites. It's the combination, the reconciliation of the positive and negative, or the male and female, etc. And so in order to manifest anything, you need to reconcile these opposing forces. And it's in their alchemy and in their union that something new is born. Masculine energy is assertive, exploratory, and transformative, whereas feminine energy is reflective, protective, and nourishing. And we need to use the proper balance of both of these energies in order to manifest our desired outcomes. Some additional axioms from the book: the possession of knowledge, unless it is accompanied by a manifestation and expression in action, is like the hoarding of precious metals in vain and foolish, a vain and foolish thing. Knowledge, like wealth, is intended for use. The law of use is universal, and he who violates it suffers by reason of his conflicts with natural forces. I think this relates to what I was saying in the question and answer period at the beginning of the class, which is that very few people who ever acquire this knowledge, begin to study magic and similar esoteric traditions, ever actually apply that knowledge practically. And so you have this class, by undertaking these practices, you're already doing much better than most people. To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. So, there are various practical ways to do that. Like if you're feeling slow and heavy and tired, doing some breath work like rapid breathing, or going for a run, or dancing, or doing something vigorous can often change that mental state from one side of the pole to the other. To destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity and concentrate upon the opposite pole to which you desire to suppress. Kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity. Mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. Rhythm may be neutralized by an application of the art of polarization. So this is to say that although what comes up comes down and all things change, by applying the art of polarization, you can station yourself above the fluctuations of our lives and kind of maintain what I think they would call in Eastern traditions equanimity, so that you're not at the mercy of your external circumstances, but rather you stay grounded and centered within an ideal mental state. Nothing escapes the principle of cause and effect, but there are many planes of causation, and one may use the laws of the higher to overcome the laws of the lower. So this is really related to a Kabbalistic understanding of magic, the idea that there are different emanations or planes. So actually within traditional magical Kabbalah, there are 4 planes, and I think we'll get into this next week in the course material. But essentially, if you affect the causal plane, it impacts the astral plane and the physical plane. If you affect the astral plane, it affects the physical plane. But basically anything that happens even here in the physical plane, as above, so below, affects all planes of reality. So everything is interconnected. It's not as distinct or separate as we like to think it is. And in fact, everything that we do affects the entire universe, because we are all interconnected with everything all the time. The wise ones serve on the higher but rule on the lower. They obey the laws coming from above them, but on their own plane, and those below them they rule and give orders. And yet in so doing, they form a part of the principle instead of opposing it. The wise man falls in with the law, and by understanding its movements, he operates it instead of being its blind slave. Just as does the skilled swimmer turn this way and that way, going and coming as he will, instead of being as the log which is carried here and there, so is the wise man as compared to the ordinary man. And yet both the swimmer and the log, wise man and fool, are subject to law. He who understands this is well on the road to mastery. True Hermetic transmutation is a mental art. The all is mind, the universe is mental. There are 2 ways of looking at this. You can look at this from an idealized perspective in which our thoughts are causative. Our universe is a mental projection, and therefore any changes within our consciousness affect the universe around us. The other way of looking at this is that if the universe is a mind that we are a part of. Any action that we would take in our lives and within the universe is a mental act, seeing as we exist, metaphorically at least, within the mind of God or within the mind of the all. I personally don't have an issue with the word God as representing a kind of totality of existence, but perhaps the all, as it tends to be said in the Kybalion, is more favorable to you, and that's fine if you don't want to use that term. And so concludes my presentation on the Kybalion and the 7 Hermetic principles. It's a very short book, the Kybalion. I do recommend familiarizing yourself with it. It will introduce you to some interesting concepts. It has helped and affected and impacted a lot of people who claim that it was very, very significant for them on their journey into discovering the esoteric side of life. And if you enjoyed this presentation, if you find these concepts valuable and interesting, I really recommend checking it out. So thanks so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed that presentation.
Thank you for tuning in to the podcast. I am the DFT Elf. Escaping into your dimension. New episodes of the Creativity and Consciousness podcast drop each week. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to stay connected and join a like-minded community, hop in the Telegram group where we discuss the latest episodes and ideas they spark. Sending you instant love and gratitude for being part of this journey.